Hi, and welcome back to the HE Enabled podcast. This is the show all about sharing our experiences of disability, neurodivergence, and long-term health conditions in UK higher education. I'm Kath, and this week I am joined by Katie. She is a lecturer at the University of Manchester, specialising in language and communicative development. So, yay, a fellow linguist. This is nice. She is also a member of Manchester's Disabled Staff Network. It's always great to interview a mix of staff and students on the show, and I cannot wait to chat to Katie about her lived experience. So I think it's time to get started. Hello, Katie. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Kath. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Obviously, I know who you are. We've had a chat. But please, could you introduce yourself to the listeners and share a little bit about your background in higher education?
Yeah, of course. So as you said, I'm a lecturer at University of Manchester. I've been doing that for about 8 years, I think. I'll go into my academic journey in a lot more detail, I'm sure. But I did a degree, a master's and a PhD at Sussex University down south. Then I moved to Liverpool for a postdoc job, a research job for a couple of years. And then I got a second postdoc at Lancaster University. And then finally, I got a permanent lectureship at Manchester University. And the kind of common thread running through all of my academic career has been a real interest in language acquisition. So how young children develop the ability to speak and read and write and use language in general, really. And more recently, for reasons that will become clear, I've started moving into research in language processing and production in autism and hopefully in the future, neurodivergence more generally.
That's amazing. So you're in there's like a child psychology or processing lab?
Yeah, so it's the University of Manchester Child Study Centre. We do a variety of research into basically how children develop. So I've got colleagues who look at children's friendships, how they look at children's cooperation. A lot of us do work on language acquisition. That's a big chunk of our research. If there are any parents listening and you would like to find out what we do, you're very welcome to Google University of Manchester Child Study Centre. And there's more information on our website about that. But yeah, it's a really lovely research group, and I've known the members of the research group for a very long time. And I feel very privileged to have this position, really, because at one point in my academic career, it was looking like I definitely wouldn't make it this far. So yeah, it's lovely.
I'm so glad. I think I've just remembered, so I did linguistics at York for my bachelor's. A lot of them are language acquisition people. So I think after the show, we'll have a chat and probably work out who we know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Or who all our mutual contacts are. We're going to get straight into the meat of it because this is going to be such an interesting conversation.
Oh,
I am excited. If you're comfortable saying, how did your disabilities, neurodivergence impact your experience of higher education?
yeah, definitely. So my disability/neurodivergence is that I'm autistic. I'm a late diagnosed autistic person. So I was diagnosed in my late 30s. I want to say about 37. I'm 44 now. I'm also probably ADHD, and I'm on a waiting list for millions of years to get an assessment for that. So it's almost like a game of two halves. So when I was an undergraduate, I wasn't diagnosed, and there were some aspects of higher education and university life that I really, really struggled with. So I did my PhD at Sussex and the other 2 degrees before that, but that was actually my third attempt at navigating higher education. So I went straight from a quite rural secondary school to a very hectic university in London, in central London. And I really couldn't cope with that. So I ended up dropping out of my first attempt, which was a linguistics and cognitive science degree. And then I went back the following year to another central London university and attempted a degree in linguistics and French. But again, I couldn't cope. From one perspective, I was very young. I was 18. But also, reflecting back, the university environment itself was incredibly difficult for me to navigate, and all of the just being in London itself, I'm not a London fan. It's an incredibly hectic place. No offense to the Londoners. My brother lives in London. He loves it, but it's just too much for me.
No, I live in London and it can be too much.
I think it depends where you go, doesn't it? But I was, central London, Tottenham Court Road sort of area, and then subsequently Mile End. But also, I think the campus environments aren't very helpful, busy lecture theatres, noisy, bright lights, strip lights. And this was in the late 90s. There wasn't the pastoral, I never know how to say it, support there. And this is not supposed to be a criticism of the universities. It was just, back in the day, we didn't have much understanding of, the diversity of the student body, and in particular neurodivergence. But in any case, I wasn't diagnosed at that point. But then after my diagnosis, it's changed an awful lot for me. And there's some negatives, but I found it almost exclusively a positive experience in terms of my work. So I'm moving towards autism research now, but in terms of, more importantly, I think, in fact, the communities that I've become part of. Neurodivergent people are the best kind of people. We have the best jumpers. We have the best special interests. Kath is wearing a particularly fabulous jumper for the listeners. I'm quite jealous of it. It's a space jumper. It's got rockets on and shooting stars. So it's changed my experience of higher education from, I don't know what the best way of phrasing it is, but it's becoming more of an advocacy experience for me now. And that's something I find a great deal of value in, and it allows me to work with integrity. I don't like the phrase authenticity, or the word authenticity, but, doing things as part of my job that I can see help other people, which I wasn't really doing beforehand because I was doing research in language acquisition and typical development, which is fascinating and important, but I'm enjoying switching my research a bit and making it very as inclusive as possible, and to try and solve the puzzle of doing this in-depth research into language processing, language production, so into cognition, but also making that something that's important to the neurodivergent community. So that's my next puzzle. I'm thinking of a study to try and interview people to get their input into what they'd like to see our next steps be. I think I'm probably talking about stuff that we plan to talk about a bit later, but yeah, it's been very positive, but also it's been very negative in some respects too.
I find that when we get to those questions, there's always something else to say anyway. But what's really, really lovely actually is that, so you're the second member of staff from Manchester I've had on the show. I had the amazing Professor Jackie Carter. She wasn't at Manchester. She's left at the point where I interviewed her, but she's still effectively a Manchester person.
She's very much part of the Manchester family. Yeah, I think I saw her a couple of days ago. So yeah.
What really strikes me is, at least you and Jackie are the two people I've met, either acquired disabilities or discovered neurodivergence once you started your careers. Jackie acquired hers only a few years ago in COVID.
Yeah.
Like during that time frame. So a lot of it is relatively recent-ish. And it's been amazing to see how the staff, especially you two specifically, but I'm assuming this is something that happens with more people around the country or at Manchester, where it just, you're like, oh, okay, cool. What can I do with this power? It can just turn straight into advocacy. I think it's incredible.
I think, yeah, it's a big change in my kind of outlook on life. But I think part of it is my autistic brain, and the kind of, in our community, we talk about our incredibly ingrained sense of justice. So if I see somebody with a issue that I can help them with, I can't not help them. It just makes sense. Like I've got the capacity to help and to give. So why would I not do that? And that's not me saying, oh, I'm such a wonderful person. It's just like I cannot deal with injustice and unfairness. And I think Jackie is very much of the same mindset. Jackie is an absolute powerhouse. So she's a force of nature. And I've learned a huge amount from her and the other people in our, I'll speak about this later, but we're working on a project looking at disability inclusion for postgraduate researchers and early career researchers. So I've had the privilege to be working with her fairly closely, and it's been a huge eye opener. And yeah, I'm glad you had her on the podcast. Listen to Jackie's one, not mine.
Jackie's only a few episodes back. It's using Power of Positive Change as the start of the title. You can go find it. It's wonderful. But yeah, it's so nice seeing you all collaborate. Manchester's like,
it's wonderful.
it just seems so strong right now. But we're gonna rewind this before we spoil too much of the questions.
Yes, sorry.
No need to apologize. But you mentioned about your undergraduate experience, obviously 2 unis in central London, but then you've come all the way up to being a lecturer now. If we're thinking back to that, how do you think, if you have anything to add, how do you think your experience as an undiagnosed undergraduate kind of shaped your journey through higher education, through uni to where you are now?
Yes. So early on, it nearly upended everything because I couldn't cope with studying at 2 central London universities. But then later, when I came to Sussex, I went and restarted the whole thing. I did English language at Sussex, and I was 24, I think, when I started. The campus environment allowed me to flourish because it's this beautiful rural out-of-town campus with this amazing brutalist red brick architecture by Basil Spence. So that was, it's an environment that my brain could cope in. And then I think being neurodivergent at that point turned into a huge benefit because you'll have this experience too, like you're studying something that you are so interested in. I remember just sitting in the library and picking books off shelves and read and just being like, this is the best thing I have ever done. And so for a lot of neurodivergent people, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I think higher education is a really good place to be, because if you can align your special interests, mine's always been language, with what you're studying, then that's incredible. So my neurodivergence at that point allowed me to do really well in my degree, to pursue a master's, and then ultimately to do a PhD. So in some senses, higher education is a really good place for neurodivergent people, but the way it's managed is a kind of a polarizing career. It's difficult to describe, but I hope that made sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the main thing we draw from this is it's not necessarily what you study, because I feel like if you're staying true to yourself, you're going to work on what you want to work on, but it's where you do it.
Exactly that. Yeah. So there may be undergraduates or prospective undergraduates listening to this, and my big advice would be go to the campus, spend some time there, and see if you can cope, because not all campus environments are friendly for anyone with sensory processing differences. So this includes non-neurodivergent people with sensory processing differences too. But also, and this might be controversial for some parents and certainly would be controversial to members of parliament, I think, choose what you care about, choose what you love, because that's how you succeed as an undergraduate. If you're slogging away at a degree that you find really tedious, you're going to be stressed, you're going to be uninspired, you're not going to do as well. And if you've got a degree that you really love, that opens up job opportunities for you. So, I mean, I didn't...
And you go. Sorry, go on. I was saying you want to talk about it as well, right? And that's the important thing. Like, networking is, like, love it or loathe it, it's a necessary evil.
It is a necessary evil, and I sort of loathe it, but it depends who I'm talking to. Like, so we're networking now, I guess, and I absolutely am having a wonderful time. But again, it comes down to the environment that you're doing the networking in. So I find academic conferences incredibly challenging because I think I have dyspraxic traits as well. And you get this thing where it's the coffee break and you're trying to hold a plate of pastries or whatever and a coffee, and you've got your rucksack on with your laptop in, and then you're trying to talk to someone you don't really know in a room that's full of other people talking, and the lights are really bright and the walls are stripy, and it's just like, it's impossible for me to present myself at my best or to make any real connection with someone in those kind of situations. So one thing I think higher education could do a lot better is providing opportunities for making connections with people in environments where it's possible for them to actually make a connection. And that applies to staff, but also students, because, you have student get-togethers and all of this kind of thing. And I think some of our teaching, it's just really the environment itself is not inclusive for the neurodivergent students.
And it's so, there's no national accountability, so it depends so much on the institution and what they can offer as well. And it's, yeah. So we're gonna, now that we're just like, we're looking at obstacles already, I want to just ask the question so we can open it up. So did you encounter any obstacles during your journey through unis. Did you overcome them, and if so, how?
So, I mean, there must have been obstacles because I dropped out of 2 degrees. And I overcame that by waiting, I think, and really working out what exactly I wanted to do, which actually turned out to be basically what I'd been doing previously, but finding the right environment to do it. There are various obstacles since my diagnosis, but again, a lot of it comes down to sensory processing and the overwhelm that goes with badly designed environments. And so what I've had to do, I had a severe autistic burnout, and it's been going on about 3 years, and I'm getting a lot better now. But I mean, I think you know that burnout is extremely, extremely disabling. And so my way of overcoming that obstacle is working from home. But in order to do that, I have to get signed off by my GP saying that I should be allowed to work from home because it's going to make me too unwell if I don't. So that's my current method of preserving myself, because, you know, when you're really burnt out, you can't leave the house. Like, I can leave the house now, but I went through a phase where I couldn't. It's that level of disabling. And if I start doing a big long commute, my commute's 2 hours, and then, you know, spend time on campus where it's noisy and smelly and bright, like all campuses are really, then that's going to burn me out again. And I refuse to let that happen. So we've got a very good disability support service at Manchester. They've been really helpful. But as with, I would imagine, most disability support services in the country, they are under-resourced. DAS, we call it, so Disability Advice and Support Scheme. My DAS advisor is amazing. Anytime I want something altered on my support plan or added, she helps me do that. She's fantastic. But the issue is that what is considered a reasonable adjustment is not consistent across different bits of the university. So because I'm a lecturer, I think it's not really considered reasonable that I should teach online, because this all kind of links back to going back onto campus after the lockdowns as well. So it's difficult. It's a constant series of negotiations. And I should say that, you know, my line manager is incredibly supportive. I'm so lucky to have her. But I think a lot of disabled people feel that life is a constant series of battles saying, I can't do that because of my disability, or I can't do that because of my neurotype. Every time you have to explain. And it's really tiring. And I don't think people realise how, in a way, I wonder whether I'm turning this into a therapy session. That's why I advocate for other people, because it gets really exhausting advocating for yourself a lot of the time.
And you can still get that gratification. At some point, it does just turn to like pin the tail on the support plan. And you're just kind of like in the dark with a blindfold on, being like, where is it? I'd like to find it.
Well, I think students suffer from organisational issues more than lecturers do, because there are just so many students. I think amongst the cohort that I teach on, there's a huge amount of students with, rightly so, with disability support plans. But when there's so many students who need adjustments, some fall through the cracks, and it's not acceptable. But there's so much work still to be done. I think often it's students with hidden disabilities coming to understand that they may be neurodivergent, for instance, and understanding, no, actually, they have to accommodate me here. They have to do these things for me legally. It's in the Equality Act. But I think that sort of development in self-insight is outstripping the university's ability to support the students who realise that they're disabled or who have become disabled.
And especially in university, when I've read a couple of papers on this, I like to think I'm semi-informed, but if you have neurodivergence, especially like the stuff that affects the frontal lobe, which is the fun bit, which is all the executive functioning. So, you know, autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, all of, I guess, what I'd call the quote unquote major neurodevelopmental bits that you see around. Because you're at school and everything is structured before uni, you don't have to worry about that executive dysfunction. So many people, unless you have stuff obviously relating to academics or in some cases social, but that's not always picked out, you know, you end up with a bunch of people realizing they're neurodivergent because it's the first time in their life where they've had to try and impose structure on themselves.
That is empirically true. So I've worked with multiple students who come to me as an academic advisor and say, I am not coping. Like, I can't get out of bed. I'm really anxious. And obviously we've got support services that we refer them to. But some of them say, well, I don't know. I just think maybe I'm neurodivergent, and I've supported them in getting assessed. And then they get their diagnosis, or they get recognition that they're neurodivergent. And then we can make adjustments for them, and they absolutely fly. And it is, you're absolutely right. It's that transition from structure being imposed upon you to having to impose your own structure. And universities now are focusing on the transition, and that we have some stuff for students at Manchester. Our amazing library people have developed loads of really good resources. But I'm not sure how many students feel able to access them or realise that they need to access them. And so, yeah, it's a very common story that students get their diagnoses in the first year because they haven't been able to cope. And I'm sure there must have been students who've dropped out. I mean, look at me, I'm a good example, because they're undiagnosed and haven't got the vocabulary to try and explain what they need. One thing which I think is amazing that we do at Manchester is if a student has a referral from their GP for an assessment for any neurodivergent condition, they're allowed to access the disability support people because the waiting lists are so long. So if, for instance, I didn't have an autism diagnosis, but I had my referral for ADHD, then I would still have a disability support person and a plan, which I think is an amazing thing.
Touch wood, touch the veneer on my table. I should have a Manchester Library person on soon.
Oh, wonderful. Are you allowed to name names?
Maybe not yet, because we've not booked a recording.
Okay, when you have, let me know. I'm a big fan of the library people.
We're chatting soon, so keep an eye out. Hopefully that all gets cleared and good. Love library people.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to pick up on, just because we made these questions together so we keep each other on track.
Yes, thank you.
No, it was great. It was a really nice way to meet you. One of the obstacles that you wanted to chat about was your transition to academia after doing your postdocs and your research and everything, and that being a major obstacle for you. So do you want to just say a few words about that?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm not sure, some people might not know what a postdoc job is, but basically it's normally a fixed term contract that you do after your PhD. I think it's more common to do postdoc jobs in the kind of sciences. So my background's psychology. And basically you only do research. You might do little bits of teaching, but you don't have responsibility for undergraduate students as an academic advisor or anything like that. So I was just in my element for 5 years, just being the world's biggest nerd. It was absolutely wonderful. I could spend a whole day working on some R code, so statistical analysis code. I'd spend a whole day doing that and not speak to anyone, and just, it was great. But by the time I was nearing the end of my second postdoc, how old was I? 30 something. And, you want to put down roots. You don't want to have to be looking for a job every couple of years. You don't want to have to be moving across the country to chase your job. So I was delighted when I saw a lectureship come up at Manchester. So I applied, and I was very lucky to have got it. I really wanted to work there because I was part of a research group that included Manchester people. So it was kind of my academic family. So yeah, I was incredibly lucky, but I don't think people realise how different a lectureship is to a postdoc job. So all of a sudden you're teaching, you're dealing with academic advisees or personal tutees, you have exam boards to go to, you have to do marking. But at the same time, for some people, which includes me, you're expected to keep your research going. I used to be a full-time researcher, and I really spend maybe a day a week on it or something. And through substantial, extensive therapy, I've discovered that in order to keep myself well psychologically, I need to be thinking and learning. I think I've realised that one of my coping techniques was my research. You kind of get into that flow state, you're doing something interesting, it's good for your brain. And I was unable to do as much of that as I had done previously. And so that and the commute was what precipitated my burnout, my first proper, really, really disabling burnout. So it's a challenge. And I talk to my neurodivergent students or PhD students about exactly that, and think carefully. I know some people who just never got a lectureship and were lucky enough to have a career on continuous fellowships or postdoctoral research contracts, but the ability to do that is very contingent on your income, really. And so it's kind of a hidden obstacle in academia, I think, that transition. I don't want to give the impression I don't love my students, because I absolutely do, but it's more doing the peopling is draining, which I don't think will come as a surprise to any autistic person listening to this.
Yeah, the best memories I have of learning is just like sitting in an office with an ungodly amount of tea with one of my poor lecturers who I know listens to this show.
Oh, hiya, I feel your pain.
Hello, Diego. Trying to teach me like syntax, and I'm just like, but even though I was just like, oh my god, what's a verb? No. But like I really struggled with it, and it's something I've always kind of sucked at. Maybe one day I'll learn it, but it was still some of my favorite memories because it was just like the right people at the right time with a vibe that wasn't too overwhelming. I think in a way I was very lucky to go to Oxford because everyone's quiet and very studious in their work, but also like everything's spread out, so I can like bounce around libraries while still be like nice and quiet and introspective, and it's like if you avoid some of the major touristy bits. So I think in that respect I've avoided that so far, and York's got a nice semi-ruralish campus.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, because there's what is it? I can't remember what it's called now, but there's a campus that's like outside the main city a bit, something beginning with H.
Heslington,
that's the one, yeah.
Yeah, so in the city is York St John. And then University of York has 2 campuses out in Heslington.
Oh, they're both. I thought that I'd been to one in the city, but maybe not.
You might have been to King's Manor, which is the one next to the Minster. That was owned by the university until recently.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe that was it. I was at a conference there. I think that was my first ever. Was that my first ever conference? Oh, baby Katie.
They don't own that building anymore, which is devastating. It was one of the nicest libraries the uni had. I was just wondering, we're just going to pop onto the questions again. Do you have any other like stories of what it was like transitioning into lecturing after starting your career as a researcher? Is there anything else you want to add about it?
I don't think I would have got my autism diagnosis if I hadn't got my lectureship, genuinely. And there's 2 reasons. So I was already beginning to burn out, and I'd had an anxiety disorder diagnosis, and I was having talking therapy, NHS therapy, which was very helpful. It was CBT, and I've heard quite a lot of autistic people say that they really don't like CBT, but it turns out my therapist had clocked that I was autistic and had adapted the CBT to accommodate for that. But also I made friends with one of my colleagues, Alex Sturrock. She is an autism researcher, but she's also a specialised speech and language therapist and an autism diagnostician. And I said to her, I do wonder, maybe. And she says, well, if you think you are, then you probably are, and go and get assessed. And so I raised this with my therapist, and she said, yep. And so that is the story of my autism diagnosis. But I think if I hadn't have struggled so much, it's a little bit like when new undergraduates come and they're suddenly like, oh, I can't cope with this, what's going on? So if I hadn't struggled so much, and if I'd stayed in research the whole time, I don't think I would have ever sought a diagnosis. So that's one of the definite upsides about having transitioned to being a lecturer, because while I don't want to ever repeat the burnout, it did at least give me this insight into myself and gave me access to an entire new community. And I get to do things like this. It's amazing. So yeah, if you want an autism diagnosis, become a lecturer at a research intensive university.
To be fair, I think my time at uni is also the reason I got my ADHD diagnosis in like 6 months through Right to Choose.
Did you?
I did. I was like, hi, I'm a finalist. I kind of need this. And then they gave me the worst appointment time. It's, hello, would you like to do your assessment at 7 o'clock in the morning?
No.
And I vividly remember, I vividly remember interrupting this poor psychiatrist as he diagnosed me. And I was like, okay, yeah, there's probably something here.
Can I just tell you my story of my diagnosis? It was an online one. This was autism. And so I kind of logged onto the Zoom, and the woman just looked at me, sort of brandished my questionnaire and said, "Is there anything you can tell me that's going to convince me that you're not autistic?" It's like, don't think so.
We're going to move on now, but I just want to mention my favorite skit is there's an autism assessment, like a scripted comedy skit, where it's, how do you wear your socks? It's like, well, I just wear them. It's like, but how do you organize them and store them? And then it becomes like a full rant, and it's like, there you go, doctor. Like, you're asking the right questions in the wrong ways. Here you go. So obviously you said that going into your lectureship was your first big burnouty thing, hopefully only. They're not great. But I wanted to chat to you about what that being the hidden cost of your student-facing role and how it really came to be.
I think you don't get trained really to be a lecturer. So we all have to do a fellowship of the Higher Education Academy, or it's called Advanced HE now, which is ostensibly training. And there are training courses that you can go on and things. But a lot of people have gone into higher education because they wanted to teach. I went into higher education because I wanted to do research. And so there's a conflict there. I love my students. I really want to make that clear. They're amazing people, but it's more costly for me than the research side of things. So I think that's the hidden cost, isn't it? It's the peopling that I have to do. And also, you know, if you're teaching, you have to teach. You can't be flexible around that. Whereas research, if you're having a day when you're really out of spoons, then you can say, okay, well, I'm not going to expect too much of myself today and I'm going to take it a bit easy. But when you're teaching and you've got admin things to do, you can't really do that in the same way. Another thing, though, is that higher education institutions are so strapped for cash that all lecturers are horribly overworked. So there's no slack in the system for anyone to be off sick. So, yeah, it's very challenging. That's really the main thing for me. It's a completely different job, and it seems to be the natural career progression, but it's actually quite crazy to think of it that way.
I think another thing we chatted about was you spent a lot of time advocating for your students, and that became a big source of burnout as well. I think we wanted to touch on that.
Yes, no, that's true. So going back to the, autistic sense of justice thing, if I see my students having a difficult time, I'll step in and try and take them under my wing and be like, right, what can we do to help you? What adjustments do you need? Do you need to go and see the counselling service, and so on and so forth? But that takes up a huge amount of time, which then takes away from the time that I'm able to spend on my research, for instance, which, as I've mentioned, is something that keeps me well. But also I have expectations of research productivity and grant money coming in. But if I'm spending a lot of time doing the kind of more extremely necessary and very important soft, in inverted commas, student support stuff, then it means I can't do so much research. And it's just, but the students who need my help will get my help. It's just simple as that. And then you see students go off and get amazing jobs and become part of the, in my case, speech and language therapy community, or some of them go and do postgraduate stuff. And it's that makes it all worthwhile, but it does come at some personal cost. Because, fun fact, autistic people are actually incredibly empathic. It's a complete myth that we're not, but we express in different ways, right? We're problem solvers. So it takes time to express empathy in that kind of way. You run out of steam eventually.
Yeah, and it can be more energy consuming as well, especially I find that if I'm met with especially an emotionally intense situation, I have a formal diagnosis, I'm rigorously peer reviewed, is that sometimes you can handle it in the moment, but then after that you get that big like adrenaline crash essentially, and you're just useless. And it's balancing that while still having to do a very demanding job at a time where everything's a bit cash strapped.
Yeah, exactly that. And what worries me is that there will be I mean, I know it's actually true, neurodivergent people leaving higher education, or, undergraduates not able to progress to postgraduate because the system is so strained, really. And I think it's disproportionately affects disabled and or neurodivergent people. And it's not okay, hence me wanting to do lots of advocacy and working with amazing people like Jackie.
Which actually brings us perfectly on to the next question.
Wonderful.
Were or are there any initiatives that made a significant positive difference to your experience? I'm going to say specifically at Manchester nowadays, because obviously this is when you got your diagnosis and you're working through things.
Absolutely. So yes, hands down, yes. So the project that I'm involved in with Jackie, there's a group of disabled staff who applied for some university funding, so internal funding, to look at how we can at first characterise and then hopefully secondly mitigate barriers to career progression for postgraduate research students, so that's PhD students, and early career researchers, so that's typically postdoctoral researchers. So that's a route that I've travelled myself. It's led by Hamid Haroon, who's our academic lead for disability at Manchester, and he's also, I think, one of the chairs, if not the chair, of the National Association of Disabled Staff Networks. Jackie was there and then she retired, so Hamid took over as lead, so I want to make it clear who's done what. And then we have Laura Howard, who's an incredible disabled postdoctoral researcher doing the kind of on-the-ground research. And we're just doing things like we've got a fund for disabled ECRs and PGRs to apply for money to mitigate the additional costs of being disabled.
Oh, is that the like the tide over fund for access to work? I think Jackie might have mentioned it.
That might be what she's talking about, possibly, yeah. It's things like if I were going to a conference in France or something and I needed my partner to come with me because I can't cope with airports, they might be able to apply for the money for his flight. So my work should pay for my flight and the hotel accommodation and the conference fee and all of that, but that's an extra cost that Access to Work wouldn't probably fund. I mean, Access to Work is a nightmare anyway. So it's that kind of thing. Or maybe you need some specially adapted equipment for field work, that kind of thing. We've also got a series of kind of web comics that Laura is working on with an artist, talking about her kind of journey as a disabled postgraduate researcher. And we're just about to start a qualitative study interviewing disabled early career researchers about what the barriers they've found to their career progression are. So that gives me life. It's so lovely. And it makes me feel like I'm making a difference while also learning a lot. So that's been fantastic. We've also got very good staff networks. So you mentioned the disabled staff network. More recently, we started a neurodivergent staff network, which is a bit more recent and a bit less visible. But I did co-chair that for a bit, but then my burnout got so bad that I had to step back because I felt I wasn't doing it properly. But both staff networks are kind of advocacy spaces. They organise events. Quite often we do things for Disability Pride or Neurodivergence Acceptance Week, I think, is that the title, or Autism Acceptance, all of these different initiatives. But also what I think is very important is we have a Teams channel for both networks. I hate Teams, I hate Microsoft 365, but we have to use them. And they're safe spaces. So we have channels that only neurodivergent people can join. And it's where you can just go in and vent. And there'll be a gaggle of like neurodivergent people going, I've had the same experience, isn't it horrible? Or have you thought about doing this to help? And so that has been incredibly valuable. But what is interesting is that these are all initiatives, or maybe not interesting, it's obvious, that have been built from the ground up by disabled people themselves. And one of the issues is that all of the stuff that we do doesn't really get recognised in terms of our workload expectations, or not sufficiently recognised. So I really think universities need to start putting their money where their mouth is. I think I cribbed that phrase from Jackie, and properly funding these things. And it's happening slowly because disabled and neurodivergent people are the most cleverest, funniest, sarcasticest people in the university setting that I know, and we've got loud voices, but it just takes time, doesn't it? But there is really good stuff going on at Manchester. There's a long way to go, but the journey has begun, I think. Thanks in no small part to Jackie.
Oh, absolutely. Jackie did so much in such a short period of time as well. Like, it's remarkable. I think it's a testament. Manchester's a very good example of what a university can do when you have staff who take the initiative. I think it's just what that expectation is and how you can do it in a way where you can replicate it. Because if you are a university that's like Manchester, obviously the entire sector has a funding issue at the moment. Manchester's fortunate to be part of the Russell Group, which tends to have a little more.
I don't think Manchester's going to collapse anytime soon, but it's sector-wide. Yeah, there's no university that's not struggling.
But compared to like the Red Bricks or like ex-colleges, a lot of universities, I think in the 90s, got university status after being a college. And that's how we had a big influx of unis. And a lot of those aren't going to have the same level of funding, and you can't expect, the staff are already going to be exhausted because there's probably been layoffs. They aren't going to have the time or energy to build a staff network.
No, exactly that. But I would say that the Russell Group are part of the problem, though, because, student recruitment for Russell Group universities, because they've got that fancy label, in particular overseas students are attracted by a degree from Manchester, or the Oxbridge, as well as the same issue. So the post-92 universities may be struggling more with student recruitment because they haven't got that cachet. To any prospective undergraduates listening, go where's right for you. Don't just come to Manchester because it's Manchester. You have to understand how the program's going to fit into your needs, and just because it's Russell Group doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have a brilliant experience. So yeah, do your research, I think.
Like, I've had Murren is now a guest who is a friend now, who she intentionally went to a smaller uni, Queen Margaret, because it was close for her and they were very good with managing needs. And like, I say this as a Russell Group and an Oxbridge graduate from two unis, but definitely like go look at what's right, especially a lot of those unis that aren't, I guess, quote unquote uni of, get a very bad rap, and I don't quite understand why.
For some students, a small university is going to be much better, and I think actually for me it would have been two. But and then Sussex was a little bit smaller, and my program that I ended up on was very small, and it was wonderful. It was like a little family. I absolutely loved it. So it's really important to really visit and think hard about what your program's actually going to be like.
No, I agree with that. I was on a combined honours course. I think it was about 7 of us total. Like, obviously the joint departments were a lot bigger, but as for the core group, that was not many. We're going to go to some rapid fires because we had an amazing discussion for a little bit over time. So this next question, I ask all of my guests. No is a valid answer, but I think you will have more to say in a few sentences, please. Have you experienced any instances of your neurodivergence disability proving helpful in a higher education setting?
Absolutely, yeah. And the main thing is the hyperfocus and the empathy. So from the teaching perspective, I'm able to use my experience to inform how I deal with students, but also the hyperfocus means that you can sit me in front of a computer with a spreadsheet and I'll see you again in 3 days' time. So yeah, it's higher education is once a good and a bad place for neurodivergent people, definitely.
Yeah, and if you have the networks and the support, you'll fly. Absolutely. How do you think we can improve the experience of higher education as both individuals and a society, if you have anything to add?
As a society, how about the government actually fund us properly? That would be nice. And I think wider understanding of what neurodivergence is and our experiences of neurodivergence would be very, very helpful. So our strengths, but also where we need more support, and allowing neurodivergent people autonomy in the way they interact with the world, I think. Also, quiet supermarkets, that would be nice, but that's not HE specific.
No, but quiet on campus supermarkets are. There we go.
Yeah, yes, yeah. There we go, there's the link.
Final question. We're nearly there. So we've spoken a lot today. We've covered a lot of ground from undergraduate a few times to where you are now lecturing. Or if we were to summarize, I guess, everything that we've covered today, what is one key takeaway that you would like listeners to remember from your story?
I actually wrote this down because I thought it was important to get it right. So here we go. Disabled and neurodivergent staff and students can make a huge positive contribution to higher education. We really can, because of our empathy, because of our focus, and because of our problem solving skills. But institutions need to listen to us. And when we say we need something, then they should do it. And then everybody's a winner. And I think the financial aspects of the higher education sector are stymieing those efforts. But as long as we keep talking to each other, I think things will slowly improve.
Yeah, and that's exactly why the show exists.
Exactly, it's wonderful.
Thank you. That's why I'm so happy I have guests like you coming on, adding to the big wall of listen, to steal the term from the annual Disabled Student Survey report.
Nice, I like it.
If you ever open it, it's just a wall of listen. It's just quotes being like, they should listen to us for like 2 pages. It's necessary.
But I think, just one more thing, I think students and staff can work together as well.
Oh,
We're not separate. We've all got similar experiences, and we need to support each other in using them. Because what students say to universities is really, really important. So if you can get the students saying you need to turn off the strip lights, then perhaps they'll do it for staff too.
Or vice versa. Sarah's episode's a great example of that from a while back with the architecture stuff. I definitely recommend a listen.
Yes, that's on my list.
She's wonderful. Another guest who became a friend of mine. Amazing people. Now has a graduate job offer. Congrats, Sarah. Yeah, I'm fine with that. We'll leave that there. I think that's a really, really nice note to end on. That's why the show is for everyone who comes on. It's not just for students, because it needs to be everyone.
100%. And students need to feel safe in knowing that, staff have the same struggles that they do, actually. And, the more we talk about things, the better the world gets. So, yeah, lovely. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for everything you're doing with this podcast. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And I'm going to promote you on the socials. And, I'll just look forward to seeing where it all goes.
Thank you. You have a much bigger Blue Sky following than me, so that'll be very appreciated.
You can have some of mine if you want.
Thank you. I'm just going to wrap this up. So HE Enabled is the show all about sharing our experiences of disability, neurodivergence, and long-term health conditions in UK higher education. If you are listening to this before Sunday, the something of March, 20-something of March, that means you're a Patreon supporter. Congratulations.
Yay!
As Katie is. So if you are not and you would like some early episodes as and when I can, and some cool nature photography content, which I occasionally upload, consider joining the Patreon. It's like £1 a month. You can find it in the description. If you don't want to do a recurring payment, then you can buy me a coffee. Hopefully the website is launching soon with all of the buttons, but in the meantime, there is a link tree in the show description. If you want to come on the show, go through the link tree, drop me a line in the email or on social media, and I will pick it up. So I think that's it. Katie, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was such a lovely time talking to you. I loved it.
Thank you. Oh, absolutely my pleasure.